Have you ever wanted to learn the Applied Energistics 2 mod and found it overly complicated? Or maybe you already know it and you just need a bit of help on some certain sections? Well, in this guide, I'm going to be taking you over everything. It's all chaptered out so you can find the parts you need if needed, but of course I would appreciate it if you watch the whole video to support the channel. We're going to start over with world gen and how to get started, building up your first miniature ME system. Maybe that's all you need. If not, we're then going to increase it to things like controllers here and channels. We're going to be looking at importing and exporting using import and export buses and autocrafting like you can see in front. We're also going to look at really crazy stuff like spatial IO ports and pylons, and we're going to look at quantum bridges and P2P tunnels to make your system really complex and wireless. We are going to cover everything in this video as this is the newest ultimate Applied Energistics 2 guide. So to start off then, the first thing we are going to need is this here, Certus quartz. Now, in order to find Certus quartz, we're going to have to find a meteorite out in the world. And a good way to find that meteorite is with a compass. Wow, we have lots of compasses here. I'm filming this on a ATM-10. So a meteorite compass here. What you need to do is get a normal compass and put it in a charger. And 10 turns will give it some energy. So I'm going to take my compass. I'm going to put it in the charger here. And then can you see I've got a wooden crank on it? Well, I can just keep turning this wooden crank. This is the most early game way of powering your machines in AE2. And you won't be doing it for very long. You can see some lightning coming in here because we've powered it with enough energy. And then we can just right click it and we get a meteorite compass. Now it's spinning around because we're in a dimension where there isn't any. So how do we make the charger and the crank? So the charger is literally just some iron and copper. And then the crank should be pretty easy to make as well. Yes, just some sticks and copper. And you just place the charger and then just place the crank on top. So let's go and find that meteorite. So when we actually have the compass, as you can see here, it's facing behind me. So if I turn around and go the way it's pointing, you will eventually find a meteorite like this. Now, they don't actually fall from the sky, unfortunately. They are made when the world generation starts, meaning they will always be kind of, well, like this. And we have some sky stone here. And what you do is you mine through the meteorite. I have to be careful here because I'm in creative, of course. Oh, and here we go. This is what we're getting to, the good stuff. You see here, it's a flawless budding Certus quartz and some Certus quartz blocks. I'm going to explain these in a little bit more detail in a minute. But basically, these budding, the flawless budding Certus quartz, they're going to actually produce Certus quartz crystals. Let me get a torch because it's very dark in here. And this is actually how you're going to get your Certus quartz crystals. And there are going to be some other ways to get them as well. So, when we actually get into the center of it, here we go. You can see here there's a large Certus quartz bud here. And what we're also going to see is a mysterious cube. This is only in versions 1.20 and 1.21. In the older versions of AE2, there won't be a cube, there'll be a sky chest in here. And the chest will have one press, whereas the cube will have all of the presses you need. What does that mean? Well, in 1.20 and 21, you only ever have to find one meteorite. In previous versions of A2, you may need to find multiple meteorites because of the items we're about to get out. There'll only be one of them in each meteorite, and it could be one of the different ones. You can share the items I'm about to show you with your friends, however, and copy them, meaning that in earlier versions, if you're on a server and people have already found all their presses, you won't need to. So it's going to go into survival and get a pickaxe. Diamond pickaxe. I think we mine it. I'm going to mine this mysterious cube and bing! Look what I've got here. I've got a guide, which is your guide to A2, and I've got an Inscriber engineering press, an Inscriber logic press, an Inscriber calculation press, and an Inscriber silicon press. Now, if I press G to open the guide, I'm just going to go into getting started and explain to you a bit more about these crystals. Mine the Certus quartz clusters and any Certus quartz blocks you find. You can also pick up the budding Certus quartz blocks. but without Silk Touch, they will degrade by 1 tier. Do not break any flawless budding Certus, as even with Silk Touch, they'll degrade to flawed budding Certus, and it's impossible to repair them back to flawless. So let's talk about it, how it grows. So the buds, which are basically these crystals here you can see growing, they will actually sprout from the Certus blocks here, like the flawless budding Certus quartz. Similar to Amethyst, if you're aware of it. You break a bud that is not finished growing, it will drop 1 Certus quartz dust, unchanged by fortune. You break a fully grown one, it will drop 4 Certus quartz crystals, and fortune will increase them. So these are the ones here. So this is a damaged, chipped, flawed, and flawless budding Certus quartz crystal. They will grow on all of them, I think. So every time a bud grows by another stage, the budding block has a chance to degrade by 1 tier, eventually turning into a plain Certus quartz block. Now they can be repaired and new budding blocks created by throwing the budding block or Certus quartz into water. I'm going to show you that shortly. So basically, let's say you've got a flawed or a damaged one, etc., or a flawless even. So when these Certus quartz clusters are growing on these blocks, every time they grow, it has a chance to degrade to flawed, chipped, and then damaged. And eventually it will just turn into a Certus quartz block like this. And you can take these ones home to, start a farm for them. And you can see here, large Certus quartz bud. I can break that and get some dust. Or if it's a fully grown one, you can actually get the crystals. So mine all of these up, basically, take them home, and obviously mine the chests so we can get these presses. And I'm going to explain shortly more about what these presses do. So now that we're back in our super flat world, we have the presses here, and also the Nether Quartz wrench and the Inscriber. But I'm actually going to go kind of backwards a bit from this and show you the crystals first. So as you can see here, we have the flawless budding ones. So you may have remembered in the guide, which, because for you it was about 1 second ago, for me it was actually about 10 minutes ago. So now looking at Certus quartz, to actually make the Certus quartz block back into a budding Certus quartz, we must submerge it in water. But how do we use our charged Certus quartz? So you have to put in a Certus quartz block and a charged Certus quartz in order to get your damaged budding Certus quartz back after it has finally degraded into this version. So a charged Certus quartz crystal. Well, again, we can get a Certus quartz crystal and turn it again with 10 turns in a charger. A charger is the item I showed you earlier. So all we need to do is get a Certus quartz crystal, which is what a fully grown one looks like on the budding ones. So once it's fully grown, it will look like this. And you get 4 whenever you mine them. So just plonk it in your charger and then turn it again 10 times. And at some point today, there we go. It'll automatically stop. And then you can see it's getting charged. We can just take it out, and we now have a charged Certus quartz crystal. All you're going to do is get a block of a block of Certus quartz, which is what it would have turned back into. This budding one will have eventually degraded into. Throw it in the water with a charged one, and what you're going to see is some lightning happening, and boom, it is now a damaged budding Certus quartz, which will then you can then grow more Certus quartz on. Now then, is there a way to speed it up? Yes, there is, and that is a growth accelerator here. So if we look at how to make a growth accelerator, we're going to need some quartz glass. To make quartz glass, we need Certus quartz dust, which again, you can get from the buds that grow, non-fully grown buds on the Certus quartz, as you can see here. So as long as it's not fully grown, you will get some dust from it. You can also just crush Certus quartz in any sort of crusher from any sort of crushing mod. The other items we will need is a Fluix ME glass cable. And to make that, we're going to need some quartz fiber, which again is Certus quartz dust, and some Fluix crystals. In order to make Fluix crystals, you do the exact same thing as I just showed you with a charged Certus quartz, but with some redstone and nether quartz as well. So throw these 3 items into water, and then you'll get some Fluix crystals. And that is how you then therefore can make your Fluix ME glass cable. You also need a Fluix block, which is just 4 of those. And that makes you a growth accelerator. So let's set this up ourselves. We've got our damaged budding Certus quartz. I'm going to get the rest of the items we need. And then here I'm going to place against it the growth accelerator. And can you see this bit is darker and this bit is lighter? So you want to face it at the Certus quartz here. So if you put the wires on, can you see the wires aren't actually connecting? It's because it needs to come out the back end. So the darker side, you can kind of see where it's facing. It's this little bits here facing the quartz. That's what we're going to be speeding up. And these will work as energy cables as well. However, in ME or AE2, I should call it, we can't use power from other mods. And we need to make one of these, an energy acceptor, which is made using the same items I've just showed you. So we can put on an energy acceptor here, and then we can connect it up to other mods. What I normally do is whenever I'm using my AE2 system, somewhere in AE2, I will just have an energy acceptor going to my main power line. Because usually in AE2, you're going to have like networks, and the entire network can have like one energy acceptor, just connecting it up. Like imagine it as a plug socket in your house is connecting it to the main grid, if you will. So I'm going to put on the growth accelerator, and what you'll see is it's going to, you can see sparks coming off it, and it's going to speed up the growth massively on the crystals that are growing here. And as you can see, we've already got 3 nodes have grown, and it's actually started growing even more in just the few seconds that I have been talking to you. This one is at now like stage 3 of growth already in about, 30 seconds. So it really does speed these up really, really fast. And there you go. Just like that, that one is now ready to fully harvest. So these growth accelerators are fantastic. Now let's actually look what we can do with the other items we got in the mysterious cube, which were our presses. So we got the calculation press, engineering press, the logic press, and the, not the name press, the silicon press. So these presses are going to go in this machine here, an Inscriber. If you make the Inscriber, if we look in it, it looks a bit scary. And it's actually not at all. We can say automation access mode. Automation can access any slot from any side. Input slots cannot be extracted from. Automation access mode you can change as well, where the top and bottom slots can be extracted from. Otherwise they can't. Auto export, which will automatically push items out of the machine, like into a nearby chest. And we also have input slot stack size. So will it take in 1 item, 4 items, or 64 at a time? So what we do here, I'm going to show you. So obviously, so let's start off with the calculation press. If I press U on it, and I go to Inscriber here in JEI, you can see that with the calculation press, if I put in a Certus quartz in the middle and an Inscriber calculation press in the top, we can get a printed calculation circuit. With a block of iron, we can then get an Inscriber calculation press. Do you remember earlier I said that if you have friends on a server, that you can, your friends can also get the presses? This is how you do it. So whether you're in an old version or a new version, if you've already got a calculation press, you can put one in your Inscriber with a block of iron and make a duplicate, basically, meaning your friends can also get one and they don't have to go and get a meteor. But there are obviously multiple meteors. It is a sandbox game, after all. We've got the engineering press, which is mainly used with diamonds in the middle for printed engineering circuits. We then have the logic press, which you are going to use with gold to make a logic circuit. And then the silicon press you're going to use with silicon to make printed silicon. And silicon you can actually get by smelting Certus quartz dust. So basically, these presses, what you can actually see these as is on a motherboard on a computer, you're basically making the circuits, the actual circuit boards for your hard drives and your computers that you're making. That is what we're doing here. We are using the inscriber with the relevant press to make a sort of circuit. Well, yeah, literally like a circuit board. And that's what we're making here. And these are vital ingredients that you'll need in AE2. I would advise having an inscriber for each one and setting up automatic inputs and outputs of whatever mod you like. Can be later down the line AE2. I'll be showing you that later. But that is how we use the inscriber to make those resources with our presses. So next up, we have... I'm like, what have we got next up? Let me look down. I've done it in like a linear order, but I can't even remember. Oh, this is where it gets exciting, guys. We are going to set up our first ME system with drives. So this is like... It's reminding me of like an old Mac from the year 2000. I'm showing my age a bit. Right. Okay. So this is an ME chest. And this is where we're setting up our very basic ME system. Let's do it again together. So we've got a chest here, an ME chest. Let me just check how to make these. Yep, you can... Okay, so a few things I want to talk about. Making the chest, we need some Fluix cables, which we've already looked at, but also an ME terminal. If you go into the terminal, you can see you need an illuminated panel, which is easy enough to make, a logic processor. So once you've made those processors with the presses, you can then actually make even more complex ones, like a printed logic circuit and a printed silicon one with some redstone will make a logic processor. But as long as you understand the concept that I showed you earlier, then we're all good. There's also these here, formation and annihilation cores. Again, just some nether quartz, some Fluix dust and logic processor, and a formation core is Certus, etc. So if you know how to use an inscriber, etc., these should all be easy to make. And eventually, we can then make an ME chest. So, ME chest. We can hook it up at the back with our cable. Put my energy acceptor on here and an creative energy cube for here. And because it says device online. Now, when I go into it, you can see it's got this little hole in the center. And this is for our hard drive. Now, there's actually a lot... They're called storage cells. The storage cells are what you're going to be using. We've got quite a few here. So the most basic is a 1K ME item storage cell. It says 0 out of 1,024 bytes used and 0 of 63 types. And then we have a 4K, which says 4,096 bytes, but 63 types. 16,000, 65,000, and 262,000. And then we've got fluid ones, and we've got, there's loads of different add-ons, etc. Like mega item storage from Mega Cells, which is an add-on mod for, crazy amounts. I mean, look how big these numbers go up to. I don't even know what that says, to be honest. But you can always see it says 63 types. So imagine I had, in fact, I'm going to show you, and I'm going to explain it further. So a 1K ME storage cell is going to need some glass, etc., and a 1K ME storage component, which is shown how to make here. A 4K one will then need a 4K ME storage component, which is made of 3 1K ones, and a calculation processor, which is, made like this again. And then a 16K one needs a 16K one, which is 3 4Ks. And remember, 3 4Ks would each need 3 1Ks. And it basically goes up and up like that, where a 64K one will need 3 64K ones, which is 3 16s to make 164. 116 takes 3 4Ks and, blah, blah, blah. So let's say I've gotten a 1K ME item storage cell, and I'm going to put it in here. And I am going to explain what bytes and types mean, but I want to show you how they mean rather than tell you. So I can put it in here. It's only got one slot, so I can put a 1K in, I can put a 64K in, etc., etc. Cool. I can now store all that stuff in the drive. But how do I access the drive? Well, I can't. What I'm going to do is plonk on, by shift-clicking, an extra Fluix ME glass cable. And then I'm going to make a terminal. We've got a few different terminals here. You can get a... the two you're really going to want to look at this point are the ME crafting terminal and the terminal. So the terminal lets you access stuff, whereas the crafting terminal which needs an ME terminal. It's basically a slightly upgraded version, but doesn't cost much, is one way you can craft in it. So I'm going to make a crafting terminal, and I'm going to slap it on the front of our wire here. And the way that AE2 works is that everything connected here is a network. So this is now on the network, and we can access the ME crafting terminal. When I right-click into it, you can see there's like space for items up here. I can search. There's a crafting terminal. I can say crafting status, which is with CPUs and auto crafting. We're not going on to that quite yet. We can sort by name and number and things like that. We can view stored items or items that are craftable from auto crafting. We can configure visible types like energy, source, fluids, because you can even store fluids and chemicals and gases and everything in AE2 eventually. It's amazing. It's actually the way that late game, you would basically hook up your entire everything, all of your farms, all of your inventories, and you can just request complex like farms to make stuff and to send it into your storage and that. It is my favorite mod, but it can get very complicated. Terminal settings, you could do some stuff in here. You could sync it with JEI, which means when I search in here, it'll search in JEI2, which is lovely. We have terminal styles. You can have a small, medium, or tall, which will change this one basically, but depending on how you have your AE2 set up, it may not work very well, like as you can see here. So, back to the types and bytes. So if I put in here storage cell, remember we have 1,024 bytes and 63 types. And you can see that when you go into your ME chest. So a type would be, let's say, jungle planks. So if I put a stack of jungle planks in here, and I can literally just plop them. Oh, where have they gone? I did just put them in here. Or I get acacia planks. Why are they... Is this bugged? Huh? I think... So I'm using like a very new version. Oh, there we go. I'm so sorry. I had it filtered on craftable. I was going to say it was a bug then, but it wasn't. It was user error. So I have it on craftable. Because we don't have any auto crafting, there's nothing here. So if we go to stored and craftable, or just stored, what you can see here is when I put those items in, take these out, you can see when I click them in, there's now 64 acacia planks. If I then put in a stack of jungle planks, we have another 64 jungle planks in here. And these are two different types of item, but there's obviously 128 items in there. So when we look in here, you can see there's 2 of 63 types and 32 of 1,024 bytes used. So we can basically put a ton of items in here, but only 63 different individual items. If I put in more acacia planks, let's say I put in another 64, and there's 128 in here, it's still only 2 out of 63 types, but we've now used 40 bytes. If you get to 63 types, you won't be able to put any more different items in there, but you'll still be able to put more items that are already in there up until you've used all your over 1,024 bytes. So hopefully that makes sense. And this is a very simple ME system you now have set up for storing and crafting lots of items rather than using chests. So now what we can look at, if you want to upgrade your storage, is look at something like an ME drive here. So as you can see in here, we've got our ME chest with our 4K ME item storage cells. And let's say in this one, we put 2 jungle planks. But we also have a drive. In fact, we've got lots of drives on the system. So in the drive, you can see we've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 slots. So I could put in 10 different storage cells in here into the network. Now when I look in here, you can see in each drive, like in here, we've got 0 out of, whatever. And in here we have 0 out of whatever. You may be thinking, well, I've just put these planks in, so where have they gone? Well, we have another drive down here, and this one is showing us blue. So green here means there's like nothing in it. Blue is kind of like there's something in it. I think it goes red when it's fully, full. It's actually going to this one down here because you've got all these different drives connected to the ME network. So imagine you could fill all of these up with huge drives with 63 types of items in each one. And this is like a tiny network as well. So it really is unlimited. And because it's all connected, via these wires, etc., this is a network. Now, again, if we look in here, we can access the jungle planks. Of course, if I break that, not in creative. If we break that cable, severing this part of the network is still on because our power is over here. However, those drives are now not on the network. Whereas if I put this back, suddenly this is all connected to the network. You can also see with the cables, they're online versus offline. Online and offline. And what we can actually see on here, so now talking about channels. And you can turn channels off in the config files, but we're not going to be doing that today. It's how some people like to play. It can make the game easier for AE2, turning off channels. We can have unlimited channels, basically. So can you see on here, there are 4 green stripes on my smart cable. So the first thing is, what are channels and what are smart cables? So you can just use these glass cables to everything. However, you can upgrade to smart cables, which show you a bit more information, which is the green channels, which show you kind of how many channels you have. So on a basic ME network like this, we have up to 8 channels. So let's again start up a new network. In fact, let's use this one. So on here, this ME chest is a channel. If I add this cable, and then I add some drives, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And can you see now it says missing channel in here? Because I've tried to overload the circuit with too many channels. Imagine trying to plug in like a million things into a plug socket and it just can't handle it. So if I delete this one, it still says missing channel. If I delete that one, there we go. It's now back online because we have 8 maximum channels. Now on this glass cable, you can't see the channels. On the smart cable, you can see it says 7 of 8 channels. So that basically is a way of upgrading it to where we can actually see how many channels we have. And you can dye them different colors. So the basic one is Fluix. You just make like this with some ME covered cable, which is basically just some wool with Fluix glass, and it will turn it into covered. And then you can add redstone and glowstone to make it into a smart cable. You can also upgrade it to dense cables as well. More on that shortly. So with smart cables, if you don't want them to connect, like here, you could just put different colors next to each other. And something else you can do is make a cutting knife. And you can make cable anchors like this. And these cable anchors, I'm just going to take one out. Cable anchors will separate cables. So if I get a green cable here and I want it to come out like this, can you see it's connecting automatically? Well, I can add a cable anchor in there so that they do not connect. If you're trying to keep, cables or networks, etc., separate. Another way to do that is by simply using a different color. But you'll also notice the different colors will not go to the other different colors. Now, do you remember I said Fluix, like this one, Fluix cable is the default. You can use Fluix to connect your different colored cables, like this. So colored ones will connect to Fluix, but different colored or different dyed cables will not connect to each other. That's how we can start separating things. Now then, how do we get more than 8 channels? Well, that is when you want to make this thing, an ME controller. So the ME controller is actually technically a multi-block. You can only have one on every single network. So if I put another controller here, can you see it's gone red? The network is now offline. If I delete it, it's now back. What you can also do is you can have it either as one face like this. You can actually have it as like a 3x3 like this. And the biggest one you can get is actually a 7x7x7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like this. And then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it can be that big. And you can actually hook this up fully. So this one comes all the way across and down. And that one comes all the way across and down. And that one comes across. But it can never touch like like this. You can't have it like this. You can only have it as like a hollow cube like this. And that's as big as it can go. And basically what we can then do is actually upgrade to dense cables. Dense cables are made with your covered ones, and then you put 4 of them together to get a dense one, and then same again, you can then, dye them, etc. So the dense cables can have up to 32 channels, and you can use these on a controller. So a basic network without a controller can only have 8 channels. When you then get a controller, things get more exciting, and we can have a lot more channels. On a controller, you can have 32 channels coming out of each side of it. So I could have 32 coming out this side, 32 coming out here, 32 coming out here, 32 coming out here, and on the bottom as well. So, looking at this side, we have 13 of 32 channels. Now, the smaller cables can still only have 8, and you can only connect things to the smart cables, not the dense. So you can see dense as a kind of way of like the mains power, and then this is like the kind of fragmented power, or the kind of, a tier down, if you will. So we have the dense ones coming off the controller with 32 channels. And then what I've got here, so you can see it says 8 out of 32, 0 out of 32, because nothing down here has anything. But going all the way back up, it says 13 out of 32. We go down to here, and then we have this white cable with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we've got the pink one with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which equals 13. So the pink one up here is saying 8 out of 8 channels. We can't add any more onto this part. But on here, we could add 4 more or 3 more. Overall, we've only got 13 out of 32. So I could add another cable coming out here and add another 8. I could add another cable here and add another 8 until we get up to 32 on our dense cable. And 32 then going into the ME controller. And remember, you can have one on each side. 32 on each side, that is. What we can then do, of course, is have, like if you've got a huge controller like this, you can have, 32 here, 32 here, 32 here, 32 here, all coming out above, and 32 here, and 32 here, and 32 here. Imagine how many faces you could have of 32 channels on a 7x7x7x7 controller like that. But again, you can only ever have one controller in each network. So I could delete that controller and then hook up this one. And look, it's working. Isn't it beautiful? Because now that's the only controller we have. Whereas if I added another controller, suddenly it all doesn't work. I can only have one. But if I add another cube here, it does actually look like it's still working. Can it be a full cube? No. See, now it's like, uh-oh, doesn't work. But this somehow does. I don't know if these actually class as being on the network or not. I've always done it like this. So it's actually a small detail I'm actually not 100% sure on. So maybe just test that out yourself. I'm going to be honest, guys, I'm actually not 100% sure. And that is an ME controller. And that's where your system starts to get really, really exciting, because we can add all these drives on, and we can do so much more with this mod. Before we move on to some more exciting things, I want to go over 2 other machines that are actually going to help you with basically filtering and sorting your drives. In case you're thinking, I don't want it to be so random. We've got 2 items here. One is the MEIO port, and one is the cell Workbench. So these are quite simple machines in theory. The MEIO port then. So you can see on the left here, we have some drives. On the right, we have some drives. Let's say I've got a 4K ME storage cell here. I don't think there's anything in these ones. So let's put this. Let's put this drive in here. In here we have a drive, right? And it's got some wooden planks in it. Maybe we don't want them to go into that cell. Maybe we want them in this cell, or maybe this cell. Let's say we're upgrading it to a 64K cell. Well, we can take that 4K cell out and put our new 64K cell in. However, we've still got the wooden planks in here. So how do we kind of sort them back into the system? And that is what a I/O port does. If we go in here, we can say we've got our cell on the left, so like this one, and we can say push it, transfer into the network. Now there's no drives in this network, so let's then get our 64K cell and put it into the network. That, and now you'll see in here that it's done it. It's transferred whatever was in that drive into the network. Think of it as you've put a CD or a USB or flash drive into your computer and moved all of the contents onto your computer's network and off the flash drive. Whereas the previous would mean we're moving everything from the network on our computer into the flash drive that we've put in. You can sort of see it like that. This is a very confusing mod, so I'm trying to use kind of real life examples to make it easier to understand. But hopefully that is helping to anyone that's already confused. So operation move to the output when empty, move to the output when the work is done or when it's full, and that's just when this item is going to move over direction. So it does work both ways. You just use the arrow, and it's great for adding in or out. There is also some compatible upgrades in here, and I don't think I've spoken about these. One of them is the acceleration card here. You can see all of the machines you can use it in. It's quite easy to make. And basically, the acceleration card just speeds up how quickly things work, and it's the main one I use on a lot of my machines because it will fly through these massive drives a lot quicker than I hadn't used them. So that's the MEIO port. Next up we have is the cell workbench. If I put this 4K cell in here, what we could do is partition the drive. Let's say in this slot here, I only want to use, damaged budding Certus quartz. You can also put in overflow destruction cards, fuzzy cards, equal distribution, and inverter cards. So we can see here, partition storage configures partition based on currently stored items, which we are, and then we can also clear the config and settings, and we can copy it as well. So it's basically filtering like what we're putting into this cell. If I only want, Xmas presents, for example, to go into there. So I'm just going to go through the quest book here because I think they had a good explanation on those upgrades. We've got the overflow destruction card. That was one that you could put in here. The behavior is comparable to something like a functional storage drawer, wherein each compartment stores a set number of stacks as opposed to allowing items from one compartment to leak into the others and crowd other kinds of items out. It will basically, it stops overflow. If you have it partitioned for one specific item, it'll stop overflow. Once this cell is full of these cables, for example, I can think, well, I don't want all these other drives being full of cables once this one's full, because you filtered it on here, but then what about when it's full? Otherwise, it's going to overflow into the rest of your network and cause just a huge excess of them. And this is a great way of only storing up to a limit of an item from your farms. And your farms can still be running, but it will never, it'll be filtered to this cell first and foremost, as it's a higher priority by default. But then the overflow destruction will make sure that you're never getting too many in there. We've got the equal distribution. That will, of course, make an equal distribution between any cells that things are allowed in and things like that. And that is the cell workbench and the MEIO port. These three chests here in my ME network are set up with three things: a storage bus, an import bus, and an export bus. These items are basically kind of fronts, I guess, plugs, you could call them, that come out of the network. And these are going to be able to access things that are outside of your network. So, what do they do? Well, the way you always need to think of import-export buses is that when I'm saying the word import, I'm not talking about importing into a chest. I'm always going to be talking about importing or exporting from the network. Any wording in Applied Energistics 2 is basically talking about the network as the number one character. So if you're saying, oh, it's an export bus, and you're thinking, well, is that exporting from the chest or from the network? That is always going to be exporting from the network. So, an export bus. If we right-click on it, what can we see in here? Well, there's some items here that can be in here, of course. And this is where I can filter what I want to happen. There's also some upgrade cards. I can use something like an acceleration card to make it export from the system a lot faster. Crafting cards, capacity cards, etc. we can increase the capacity of how much we can filter out of here. Let's take an example then, in this instance, that we are going to be using red and orange wool, be importing and exporting from our ME system. Now, I don't think I have a terminal on this network, so I'm just going to add one on because we can't actually access it. There's a crafting table, terminal even. So I'm going to put in here my red wool and my orange wool. Take one out of each just so I have access to it. So these are now based in our both in our network. Let's say I've got an import bus. Let's say I've got a farm over here. Let's see this chest is actually coming from my sheep farm and it's producing wool. Well, what I can do is I can put into this chest 64 wool, red wool, and can you see that the 64 wool is slowly going down? That is because the import bus is taking from the chest and importing whatever it's connected to into the network. And this is how you can actually attach your farms to go straight into your Applied Energistics 2 system and network. An acceleration card would make this go a lot faster. As you can see, it does get faster over time as it speeds up. But imagine you've only got one item coming in every minute. You might want to add an acceleration card in to keep the speed fast. Now, if I go into this import bus and I filter it in here for orange wool, and then I put in a stack of red wool, what you're going to see is absolutely nothing happens. So now I've very simply gone into the import bus and I've said I only want orange wool to be imported through this import bus. And the red wool will be ignored, whereas the orange wool here will go in. Meaning we can have other exits here going into different networks or other places that we don't want going into this network. Over here on the left, you can configure items, source, chemicals, or fluids, because AE2 can actually accept all of these things. You can actually store liquids and gases from maybe mechanism in here. And this is what is so amazing about Applied Energistics. I could have oxygen from mechanism being made here and import the oxygen into my system. Maybe I've got a farm over here somewhere where it needs oxygen from mechanism. And then I can use an export bus up against that machine from mechanism to export the oxygen back out. So rather than thinking about your Applied Energistics system as just being used for items, I would actually encourage you to think about it for everything that you're using in your farms and your systems and your setups. That is the whole idea about AE2, is that it could pretty much do everything. And that is what makes it so universally usable and so just so amazing. It really is absolutely amazing once you know how to use it. So it's going to be the exact same but reversed with the export bus. It's going to export to this. Now, of course, it doesn't really know what the chest wants. So let's say I want red wool. It's not just going to export everything. And it's going to start placing in here from my ME network the red wool that I have in my system. Now, if I actually go in my crafting terminal, what you can also see in here is I have 64 green wool, and I can take that out of the Applied Energistics network. So I've just taken that green wool out of the system. And this is where it gets really interesting. So I had the green wool in this chest here attached to a storage bus. If I put the green wool in this chest, nothing happens. It's not going in or out of the system, but it is connected to the system with a storage bus. The Applied Energistics 2 network is able to access this storage through the storage bus. It can literally see the network. So if I go in my crafting terminal, you can see in here green wool. And if I was to get a stack of yellow wool and put it in this storage bus attached chest, the yellow wool here, you'll now see, you know, this guy is really annoying me. He is really, really, really annoying me. We go into the GUI again. You can see in here we now have the yellow wool and the green wool, and I can actually take them out as well. I can place them back in, however, but they shouldn't reappear in here because it's not filtering it or anything. It doesn't know, where to put it, so it's just going to go back into. Once you take it out and put it back in, it's not going to go back into the same inventory. There's no sort of filter set up on there. It's just going to go into one of your drive cells. In the storage bus, you can clear the config. You can filter it, etc. If you want, and you can partition it. Report inaccessible items. Only extractable items will be visible. So you could say, oh, yeah, there's an item in here, but I can't actually extract it. So, leave it alone. Only extractable items will be visible. You can filter on insert and extract. And you can also input output mode bidirectional. So you can filter it, be able to put stuff back in here as well. You can also set priorities up here. So if it is putting back into the system, what kind of priority is it on the system? You can set a higher or lower priority. But this is basically how you can import and export into your system and also access adjacent types of storage networks, like this chest here, in your Applied Energistics system. The next two things are these here. These are Annihilation and Formation planes. So what do these do? Well, these are another way that your AE2 system can interact with the world around it. I actually can't get my formation plane working. This is a very modern version of Minecraft, like very modern, that I'm filming on. So I don't know if it's just a bug, because these should just be opposites of each other. So I'll show you the Annihilation plane. What this one does, you could place it like here. It doesn't have any filters or anything. But if I place a piece of dirt in front of it, or actually something that I know I haven't got in, let's say a acacia log. If I place an acacia log, you'll notice that the acacia log disappears every time. This is sucking it into the system. It will break blocks in front of it. You can actually apply enchanting to it for like not looting. Oh my god, what's it called? Fortune, etc. If I now go into here, you can see I've got 5 acacia logs in my terminal. If I press another one, it goes in another. I can also drop items. Oh, I should be able to drop items. There you go. It kind of has to like be dropped at it, if you see what I mean. If I drop it here, it doesn't really do it. But if I drop it into it, it does go in. And this is where you're going to get them. So you can see I've got 2 more Annihilation planes in here. So that's another way that you can use sort of buses. I guess these are more planes, but they're kind of like a bus. And then the formation plane should do the exact opposite. It should be able to place items in front of it. So you can see in here block placement. You could drop them as items or blocks. They'll be placed as blocks or dropped as items. And we can, put a priority on here and add some card upgrades as well. And I put in leather, and we have got leather in there, but it won't seem to drop it, which is interesting. It's another tiny thing. I'm like, is this just not working, or am I doing something wrong? I don't feel like I am. So apologies for that if I am. You know this mod really well. I'm struggling with this one small detail. But the Annihilation plane can break blocks, and the formation plane should be able to place blocks. Now for something really exciting, auto crafting. This may at first seem complex, but actually it's not. What I have here is a very simple auto crafting system. So I have our crafting terminal over here, and then I have some other things. Let's set it up from scratch so we can see what we've done. In fact, yeah, do that. So the first thing we're going to need is patterns. And I'm going to be using a pattern provider. If I place this onto our network and I go into it, you can see I have some space for some patterns. So then I'm going to add some more cabling to here. And I'm going to add 2 things, a pattern access terminal and a pattern encoding terminal. So the pattern encoding terminal is where we can encode some patterns to put into our pattern provider. The pattern provider here is providing patterns to the network. Let's say I want to make a rug, and I'm like, I'm going to provide the pattern of the rug I want to the seamstress. Well, this machine here is what is providing the pattern to the system. The encoding terminal is where you're making the pattern that you want, and the access terminal is where you're maybe accessing a catalogue of patterns that you've made. So let's make our first pattern. We're going to go into our ME pattern encoding terminal, and I am going to say, let's say, planks, oakwood planks, which we've got in here as well. I'm going to say 1 here and 1 here. That equals a stick. And this is the pattern encoding terminal. I can say, do I want to allow substitutions? You can prevent alternative alternative items. Like, for instance, jungle woods or acacia woods or birch woods. Maybe we only want to make this in this system with oak woods. Fluid substitutions, you can use different fluids instead of items. Maybe it's liquid water that you have stored in your ME system as opposed to water buckets, for example. Do you want to allow this or not? Then what we need to do is put a pattern in this slot. So I've got my crafting pattern. Let me get a blank one. A blank pattern. And I just click this arrow button to encode it. And it'll encode this pattern onto my... onto my pattern here. So there we go. It says crafting pattern, crafts 4 sticks with 2 oak wood planks. I'm going to take that out into my inventory. You can also use processing patterns, smithing table patterns, and stone cutting. For processing, this is where like you're using more in-depth machines, and it can actually be used with like import and export buses, etc., to technically craft things with machines that are not in the network. So you could hook up a processing pattern saying, you know, if you give these items, this is what I will get. And then you can use an export bus with that item, etc. And basically what you can end up doing is actually using sort of mechanism items or any mod really with a bus set to it. And you'll end up actually making that item from the items machines that you've got outside your system, but that's a bit more complex. So we've set up the stick pattern in our encoding terminal. I'm then going to put my stick pattern into my pattern provider. If I now go into my crafting terminal, you can see it's got a little stick sign with plus, meaning I can craft it. You may remember earlier in the tutorial, we can look at stored items or craftable or both. If I look at just craftable, you can see I can now craft sticks. So we've got our pattern provider, and we have got our where we are encoding our patterns to put into the provider. One other thing we have here is the pattern access terminal. You may have loads of these pattern providers set up all around your base, and the pattern access terminal is where you can access loads of them, basically. So you can see all of the different ones you've got and which machines have them, for example. And that's what the pattern access terminal is. Maybe you're just using one of these, or you've got them all next to each other, and you can go into them manually. But even if you have got multiple of them, I would advise getting an access terminal. So the next thing we need is a molecular assembler, and you need to attach this to your pattern provider. And what you can see here is it's empty inside. This is like an automatic crafting table. This is actually what's going to build the items. And I can add one to every single side of this pattern one, and you would want to do that for each pattern provider that you technically have, meaning that it can do more crafts at once rather than just using one at a time, for example. And then we need to build the brains of the operation, and this is our crafting storage. So you can get a crafting unit, you can get 4K crafting storage, and again, that goes up to 64K and 256K and things like that. It's the exact same thing as our storage cells, and it must be a cuboid. So this does not work, but this does. This does not work, but this does. And it can be pretty much any size you like. The bigger and better this is, made up with, you know, you can mix and match, by the way, a basic crafting and some 4Ks. But if you had this all as like 64Ks and had it as like a 3x3, it would be a lot more powerful than, you know, a smaller version. And this is the brains of the operation. This is where it has all your crafting queues, and this is like the CPU that is sending out tasks around the network, telling it where to get items from, where to put them together in the molecular assemblers and things like that. And the bigger and better you build them, the bigger and better and more complex things you can build. Because don't forget, yes, we're making sticks here, but you could actually be doing many multi-step crafts. If I said make planks, in fact, let's do it. Let's do this. If I said, let's get some patterns, and I'm going to say in here, we want to make sticks, okay? But maybe, so let's encode the pattern. Put a new pattern in here. You could put a stack of them in here, so you could just make loads of patterns, by the way. Let's say I need to do oak wood equals 4 planks, okay? So oak wood equals 4 planks. I'm going to press encode pattern. We can now make oak wood planks. I'm going to take that pattern out and put it into here as well. We can then make sticks, as we already know. And then what can we make with sticks? Maybe we could make... maybe we could use an iron ingot and make some engineer's wires cutters. Or maybe we want to make redstone torches. Let's do that. So we can get a stick and we can add a piece of redstone on top, which makes a redstone torch. And, you know, the list can go on. So I've now got in here sticks, planks, and redstone torches. Now, if I take out the planks and all I've got in here is oak logs, I now know that the system can turn these logs into planks. It can then turn those planks into sticks, and it can turn those sticks into redstone torches, as long as we have, of course, some redstone in there, which is a multi-step crafting thing. Now, I do not need to go in here and say, give me planks, give me sticks, give me torches. All I actually have to do is go in here and say, redstone torches, give me 10 of them, next. And what it's going to say is it's going to craft 12 sticks to craft 10 redstone torches. It's going to also craft 8 oak wood planks, and it needs 10 redstone and 2 oak logs to do it. The crafting CPU, we can say which one. I've only got one. You can see how much storage and processors it's got. Automatic, start. And what you'll see is the planks, etc., all being made in the molecular assemblers. And it's going to speed it up if we put more on, of course. And now in here we have 10 redstone torches. And it's made them for us all the way from oak logs immediately. My advice to you is, if you are making anything more than 10 times, like, you know, you're going to be making it regularly, or you're going to need it regularly, then what you should be doing is setting up patterns for these items. I always start off with things like planks and things like that. And just building up a massive storage system so that you could just craft stuff like this. Now, one other thing we can do is get co-processors. This is just another device that you can add to your crafting multi-block, which will basically give it more threads to assist in the CPU. And there's also a crafting monitor you can make, which basically you could just see the crafting in it. You know, you could put a monitor of next to here and just look in it and see the crafting queue, because you can also see the crafting queue in the actual crafting storage units you're making, you know, here. And these don't have to be in the same rooms. Remember, these could be, you can have your patterns in one room, your crafting storage in another room, you know, on different parts of the network, as long as it is all connected to the network. You know, if we look at this whole thing over here with all our storage over here, our import and export buses, and now our auto crafting. Remember, this is all one network that we've built. This is not a separate network. Everything stored over here and accessible in this terminal is actually, because it's connected over here to the controller, this is all the same network. And that's basically how you do auto crafting at a fairly basic level. I think you should sort of play around with it and test out different things, because it can get really, really fun. The next part of this tutorial, in my opinion, is the best part, and also the most annoying, complex, aggravating, confusing part of the entire tutorial. Let's pray together that I can explain this in a way that you all understand. So, P2P tunnels. What are they? Why do we use them? This here I've set up is a P2P tunnel, and it's a way of really maximizing channel usage on your system at a much more complex level. So let's destroy everything here and start from the basics. I've got my main network that I've shown you guys all already. Here it is. And then what I've set up over here is a little sub network. We have my energy cube with the power, the energy acceptor. And what this is actually interestingly doing, and I didn't mention before, is quartz fiber. You could use quartz fiber in the middle of your wires to transfer power, but not channels, okay? This bit technically isn't on the network. We're just getting power from it. And you can see we've got 6 out of 8 channels on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the terminal is 6. I've got 5 drives, only with this one 64K storage cell in it. and the terminal. So 6 channels on this mini sub network. And if I go into the terminal, you can see we've got 63 lever and 2 leads. Obviously on this separate network, which we've been building in the main majority of this tutorial, we have no lever and no leads. What we can then make is a P2P tunnel. So this is where it gets complicated. We have an in and an out. And I think the in and the out is what confuses most people when you're connecting these. So what I want to do is I want to connect up these 6 channels to this main network. Now remember, on our main ME controller side here, we can have up to 32 channels, can't we, on this one face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a P2P tunnel like that, okay? I've put the P2P tunnel up against it, and then I'm going to get some dense cables, which of course can have 32 channels. Can I connect dense up? Okay, maybe we'll use smart, this example. There we go. So you have to use, because dense can only go onto this. Remember, we can't use connections on dense. My brain's fried. Brain rot. Okay, so we've connected up one channel. It says 0, but it will be kind of like 1 to the P2P tunnel. And what you'll notice is that the P2P tunnel says device offline. And you may be thinking, well, that's strange. Why is it offline if it's connected to the controller, which obviously is powered? And that is because this tunnel is, you need to see it separately to the network. It is that. It is a tunnel between your networks. And it doesn't just have to be used for ME. I'll show you some other examples, but we're mainly using it for ME channels. So what I've done here is I've got the P2P tunnel. It's offline. And I want to connect it up to this other network. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another P2P tunnel. Oops. Here. And of course, this one is offline as well. And I'm going to connect that up to this one here. So what we have is my 6 channels going into the tunnel, and then that's connecting at the end of the tunnel to the controller. So this tunnel is connecting the controller. This end of the tunnel is connecting the channels. However, this is offline. So what we can actually do here is let's connect it up to our energy acceptor so that this tunnel is also powered. So I'm just going to grab some Fluix cable here, add a bit of quartz on, and then add some more cable. So although this is all connected by wires, it's all separated. This is one network with 6 channels connecting to power via quartz, which remember does not transfer channels. And then over here, the same thing, we're connecting power to this side of the network, which is our tunnel network, which has 2 channels because we have the in and the out. And then we have the quartz fiber giving it power. The important thing to remember here is that this side of this controller of our main network can have 32 channels. And technically it's using 1. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to shift right click this P2P tunnel with a memory card. And that's going to assign it a frequency. E969 is the frequency we've got on there. And you can see it's saying we're carrying 6 channels and it is unlinked. And it is now online because it is powered. I can then right click this one, this P2P tunnel, and that will link it to the first one. And what you'll notice is that on here it says linked output side. The first one you link is the input side. The second one is the output. We're inputting these 6 channels into the tunnel and we're outputting them into the controller. Meaning, we can now see the lever and the leads in this network. So I have literally just linked up these 6 channels to here. Now what I could do is on this mini network is set a controller. And remember, we can have up to 32 channels. In fact, no, ignore me there. Ignore me. Because that's not going to do something else. But remember, we can have our channels on here. We can have up to 8 channels, 32 channels on here. And we've got over 6. But what you'll notice, so what I could actually now do is push this back and have like dense cables so that we can have like loads of P2Ps coming off it sort of thing into individual networks. And to actually show you that, I've set it up here. I haven't really given myself much space, but here's an example. So what I've done now is on my controller, the same part, I've put a dense ME, a dense smart cable, and then I have a P2P tunnel coming in, output, and it's carrying out the 6 sides, however. So you do need to be careful of that. So it's carrying out 6 sides, because that here is pushing them through the controller. So you do need to be careful of doing that. But if we go back to our basic example before, you can now see that it is taking only 2 channels on a smart cable. See here? So it says carried channel 6, but only got 2 channels coming down the smart cable, even though it's carrying 6 into the controller. And that's basically how you set up a simple P2P system. You can make these very, very, very complicated, but it's a great way of sub-networking and actually adding things, you know, from other networks into your network here between different ones. So the next thing I want to talk about is spatial storage. So what we have here is some spatial pylons and a spatial I/O port. Your network can only ever recognize one pylon setup at once, but it can recognize any amount of I/O ports. Not that that really matters. So what we're going to do here on our network is set up an area that we are going to copy. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then I'm going to put a universal cable here. So what this pylon is doing is it's going to copy everything in this area. It cannot copy here or here because that is at the edges, and it can only copy like what's in the middle, if that makes sense. So it can copy here, but I can make it a lot longer like this, and then it'll be able to copy sort of like, you know, this size, like this, for example. It won't be able to copy here, and I had to add another length, and then it will. So then this is going to use more power, however. So let's go back to a really simple setup, 2x2, just for purpose of this tutorial. So what I'm saying is this area here, I'm going to be copying. I go to my spatial I/O port and I put in a cell, spatial storage cell. And you can see here it stores 2x2x2, 16x16 times 16, and 128. Obviously, the bigger you're storing, the more it's going to use. You can see how much power you've got stored in the AE2 system, our max power, and how much it's going to require for this one. The efficiency will go down the bigger the area you do. You can add to the efficiency, which I'll show you again, not again, but I'll show you in a minute. You can see we're using a 1x1x1 size. So if I press the button, there we go. I don't know what went wrong there. I don't know if it didn't like my cable. But if I put a piece of grass here, then, as an example, it might have the blocks that are like proper blocks. If I put a piece of grass here, in here, and then I put my storage cell in here, and I press the button, the grass block has gone. I could then move my spatial pylon to somewhere else. Let's say I move it here, or it was on this side, and then I press the button again. Nothing happens. Why? We need to then move the spatial storage cell. Imagine it like an auto-crafting pattern. We've got it stored in here. We could put that into our inventory and run off to 1,000,000 miles away and put our base back down. So I could put it back into this first slot, press the button again, and it will then place the build wherever you have then designated. I can then store it again. So I'm going to need to... so now it's empty, basically. So if I put it back in there again, I press the button again, it's going to take the grass block again. I can then move it to here, press it again, making sure I move it back into the slot, and it's going to place it there. Now, you can add this to, like, you know, huge areas to be able to get, you know, obviously a lot bigger than this, to be able to get more, obviously. But you're now going to see if it's this size, it's going to take 1.5 million AE. Now, you may be aware that we are already using energy acceptors to accept an unlimited amount of energy into the network, but it will only be able to use what is stored on your network. But don't worry, there is dense energy cells you can get. There's even creative energy cells for your AE network as well that you can just simply plonk onto your network to be able to actually store an insane amount of energy. And you can now see I've got like basically unlimited energy on my network, and it'll be able to copy this huge amount. So obviously you may not be playing in creative, so you will need some dense, for example, energy cells on your network to store that power needed for huge builds that you're moving. The efficiency, however, is going to play a part in that. 1.5 million, the efficiency is 51%. What I can then do is if I grab my cables, is I can add more anchors on like this. I can, add these anchors on. And then maybe I'll add another lot. Well, let's see. We're now at 61% efficiency. I'm going to go, okay. Well, now I'm going to add another lot. And you can see, oh, it's not liking it. Well, that's actually no issue. It's just because we've run out of channels on here. That's all. So I'm just going to delete. You obviously need to make sure you've got enough channels for this to work. And I'm going to add, again, more over here. Run out of channels again. I'm wrong this time, for goodness. Okay. It just likes it like that. 0 out of 8 channels. Now you can see it's at 77.77%, so it does look like you only have to add these on like one side. You can't add them in the middle. They can't be touching anything, as you can see here. But that's how you basically get your efficiency up so that it uses a lot less. Now, I can't remember how much it was using before. Now it's only using 500,000, whereas before it was going to be 1.5 million. So we basically had decreased the power usage by a third. Just by doing that. And what that is literally going to do is you can copy, really big areas and just move your actual base or whatever you want around the map. Because remember, you can just pick it up in a spatial storage and run off with it, place it back down somewhere else. One other thing which is added by Spatial is the spatial anchor. And this actually does something quite different. This basically is going to load chunks that your network is in. Loading 4 chunks in one world. What power unit do you want to use? And you can press overlay mode. And you can see this whole area here is the area that it's chunk loading for my network. It's not loading this area because this is not on my network. Or at least it's not on the network that I'm asking it to chunk load. And that is what the spatial anchor does. And that is all the spatial items you can use in AE2. And now the very last chapter of our guide, which is going to be wireless AE2. This actually is much easier than using P2P tunnels, if you did find that confusing. This is actually my preferred way of doing it, to be honest. And this is quantum bridges using quantum computing, which sounds even more complex, but it's really not. So the first thing we are going to need to do is make a matter condenser. And what the matter condenser does is it deletes things. It deletes whatever you put in it. However, if I put a storage cell in here, let's say a 4K storage cell. Sorry, not a cell, but the actual component that is used to make the cell. You put that in the condenser here. And then if I put, what you'll see in here is it says 0 out of 32,768. What I'm going to then do is click ME condenser output. I do not want it to destroy items. I want them to condense into matter balls. I could put 64 oak logs in the trash can item. And it now will say on there 64 out of 256. Once it gets to 256 items, you're going to get a matter ball, which you can use to make into paintballs. You can use them in the Mega Cells mod, which is an upgrade. It's an add-on mod for AE2 where you can get crazy big storage cells. And honestly, not much else. From the Advanced AE add-on mod, you can also put 64 of them in there to get singularities, which is eventually what we're getting to. So we can also say output, condense items into singularities. So rather than matter balls, we can click it again and get singularities. But for this, you must use a 64K component. And you will have to put in 256,000 items in order to get a singularity. That is, I think, 4,000 stacks of items. But if you're at this point in the game, then you're probably going to have huge farms or mining operations going on in maybe other dimensions, etc. Anyway, so let's just pretend I've put 256,000 items in there. And I've gotten myself a singularity, which is this item. What you then want to do is get some ender dust. And if you don't know how to get ender dust, it's actually from Applied Energistics. You just shove it in the inscriber. Let's say I've got my ender dust. I'm going to throw that on the floor with my ender dust, and we now need a explosive reaction. Now, lucky for us, AE2 gives us tiny TNT made from some Certus quartz and gunpowder. And if I just get a button or, a lever, and I just press that, it's going to explode, of course, the singularity and the ender dust. And boom! What that is going to cause is the singularity and the ender dust to turn into 2 quantum entangled singularities. You're going to get a pair of quantum entangled singularities. And these are used together to link things wirelessly. So the next thing you want to make, now that you've got a node, so again, get your matter condenser, put in a 64K storage component or bigger, click it to 256K items, blow it up with some ender dust and some TNT or tiny TNT. And now we're going to build this old thing, which is the quantum link. So if I put in quantum, how do you make these? It's some quite advanced, I guess, stuff, but not really. And also a quantum link chamber. So you're going to want Fluix pearls for those, which is ender pearls and Fluix dust. Yeah, it's all quite. You get your quantum ring and you go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So literally like a 3x3 like that, and put your quantum link chamber in the middle, which will convert it into a multi-block. Once you've done that, as you can see here, you can connect it up to a network, which is what I've done here. This is just a creative energy cell from Applied Energistics, and I've shoved a drive in here with some diamonds in. You can see here the diamonds are in here. So when we right-click into our quantum link chamber, we can use one of our quantum entangled singularities, which has basically linked it. What I'm then going to do, and this can go across dimensions, put a cable on there to link that up. This can go across dimensions. Where's my terminal? Terminal. Yeah, it can go dimensions, millions of miles. As long as the chunks are loaded, you can access this from anywhere. So I go in here, there's nothing in here. I'm going to go into my quantum link chamber and put in the other quantum entangled singularity. And it's not working. I think I actually used the wrong pair. I think my inventory was full and I'm in creative, so it deleted one. Let me just make one more quickly. But this is a good lesson in knowing that you have to use the pairings, because they come in pairs. So the singularity, throw that on the floor, and explode them, of course. And there we go. So yeah, you can see you've got the pair. You must actually pick them up together. They do come in pairs. And what's going to happen is if I put one of these in here, and the other one in here, you see there's like little bubbles and stuff going around in there. Why is it? Yeah, it is working. In both of them. Now, when I look in my other terminal, I can see the diamonds, and I can take them out and put them in, because these two networks are quantum linked to each other, and it can traverse sea, land, dimensions, blah, 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 which is really, really cool. But we can go one step further. We can make something called a quantum network. That's a magnet card. Oh my god, I'm losing brain cells here. A quantum bridge card. Okay, so you can make a quantum bridge card, and this is basically a portable way of taking that quantum link around with you. You can see here it says missing singularity. So let's take the singularity out of this one, put it into our wireless crafting terminal up here. Can you see it's got a singularity sign and then a card sign? So you can put both of these in here and be able to access wherever the diamonds are. In here, you can see you've got the diamonds. And in my wireless terminal, I now have the blocks of diamonds. I can see them. And this is actually a portable one. So you just need to make a wireless crafting terminal and a quantum bridge card. Now, if you don't want to use the quantum bridges, but you still want to get a wireless crafting terminal, you can do that. And that is using a wireless access point. So let's say this network over here that we were showing earlier with our auto crafting, etc. Let's say I want to put on a wireless access point here. I'm going to put my wireless crafting terminal in the top right slot here. And now it is linked to this network. And when I go in, can you see I can see all the stuff? I can't see the quantum stuff because I've linked it now to this wireless access point. But I can see and use everything that is now in this network because this little wireless access point that I've just linked it to. Now, if I walk off a million miles away, you can say quantum bridge and wireless access point are connected to different networks. I take it out because it was getting confused and it's saying wireless is out of range. So that access point over there is now out of range. So how do we increase that range? Well, if I go into the wireless access point, what I can actually put into the wireless access point, you can see it says range 16 meters and how much energy it's using. I can put in a wireless booster. I can put in quite a few of these. You can see the range is going up. I can put in 64 and now it can go 500 meters away. Now, let's say I was 500 meters away and I had my network set up over there. I could then put more wireless access points around the base. And if you do have the add-on mod, AE Infinity Booster mod, then you can actually get an infinity range booster, which does what you think it does. It's an infinity range, but that is a different mod that is an add-on to the AE2 mod. And that's pretty much how you, two different ways that you can access your entire networks and actually connect your networks wirelessly. And that is it. That is the entirety of the AE2 mod. Oh, there's one tiny little thing I wanted to show you. And that is the ME level emitter. If I place this on here and go into it, can you see it says level emitter? Redstone mode. Emits when levels are above or equal to limit, or when they're below limits, etc. You can add this onto inventory. So if you put like an import or an export bus on a machine, what you can do is attach it to an inventory so that it's all done on redstone. So you can say, you know, if you've got 1,000 of something, then I want you to emit a redstone signal, and that will turn off the factory that it's connected to. Like let's see, I had a factory here that's producing something. I can say once this network has 1,000 of whatever that factory is producing, emit the level of it. Crafting and fuzzy cards, how you're going to filter on there. And then it will stop. It will emit a redstone signal. So you put your machine here to stop working on redstone, and then it would actually stop working. Meaning you can control levels of inventory that way as well. Just one little thing, really important, I think, in my farms. I wanted to show you. So we've gone over the Certus quartz and world gen, the inscribers and processors, your first storage cells and storage chests, how to use terminals, drives, and a basic ME system, quartz fiber, and how it can only transfer power and not channels. We've looked at channels and how the controller works. We've also then looked at importers, exporters, upgrades, and storage buses, annihilation and formation planes, auto crafting, wireless ME, P2P tunnels, spatial storage, and everything else in the mod. So I hope this was helpful. Please do subscribe if it was. Basically, on my channel, what I have here, and you'll see, is a Minecraft shelf where I have all my different mod guides, and I'm trying to do loads and loads of different mods. When the big new games come out, I do also cover the big new games that come out in gaming as well. So if you are specifically just looking for Minecraft, make sure to check out that Minecraft shelf. And again, please do subscribe. You can join the Discord. In a few months, I'm going to start streaming from when this video is posted, and I'll probably be doing a Minecraft server, etc. I also have a Patreon where you can support the channel if this was helpful, which I'd really appreciate as well. But do check out all the other mods. And I'd love to also know in the comments, what mods do you need guides on? Because I'm always looking for different mods or new mods that you guys would need covering.